Welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Church of Charlotte's annual Young Adult Service. My name is Hunter Soper, and I will be one of your speakers here today. We are here to abet existence and to witness it, to notice each other's beautiful faces and complex nature, to go so that creation need not play to an empty house.
I get to work with the 3- and 4-year-olds in our Children and Youth Religious Education program and find resonance in the chalice lighting words that we use there. If you know those words and those actions, please join with me. We light this chalice to celebrate Unitarian Universalism. Ours is a church of the open minds. Ours is a church of the helping hands. Ours is a church of the loving heart.
Welcome to today's service. Whether you are here in this room, in our alternative worship space in the Bernstein Room, watching this service by way of our live stream, or viewing an archived video of this service. My name is Felix McKee. We're honored to have guests with us here today. Our members would like to greet you following the service. So that we might do so, if you are visiting, please raise your hand and keep it up. Members, please take note of guests seated near you. After the service, invite them to join you for coffee and conversation in Freeman Hall. Should it enhance your experience of future services, you can find both a large print order of service and a personal hearing assistance device on the table at the entrance to the sanctuary. If you would like to learn more about us, please fill out a yellow card and place your completed card in an offering basket when they are passed later in the service. Members with a life event to share can do so on the reverse side of the card. You'll find them, along with offering envelopes, on the clipboards at the end of the row. Please begin passing them down your row now. Some returning visitors may be interested in hearing about how to become a member. If so, talk with our membership coordinator, Kelly Green. Her contact information is on the back of your order. Again, to each of you, welcome.
Remember, by Joy Harjo. Remember the sky that you were born under. Know each of the stars' stories. Remember the moon. Know who she is. Remember the sun's birth at dawn, that it is the strongest point of time. Remember sundown and the giving away to night. Remember your birth, how your mother struggled to give you form and breath. You are evidence of her life, and her mother's, and hers. Remember your father. He is your life also. Remember the earth whose skin you are. Red earth, black earth, yellow earth, white earth, brown earth. We are earth. Remember the plants, trees, animal life, all who have their tribes, their families, their histories too. Talk to them, listen to them. They are live poems. Remember the wind, remember her voice. She knows the origin of this universe. Remember you are all people, and all people are you. Remember you are this universe, and this universe is you. Remember all is in motion, is growing, is you. Remember the dance language is, that life is. Remember. Good morning. Good morning. I am Emily Boone. My husband Hunter and I joined the UUCC in February this year, carried here both by individual paths and by a joint path. I grew up in the Episcopal Church and I loved it. I loved the community. I loved the friends I grew up with, who I went with to conferences and Appalachia Service Project, who I stayed up with at lock-ins and played handbells with in the choir. I even loved the ritual, each week going through the same liturgy and stating the same collectively held beliefs. I was proud of how accepting our church was, boasting female celebrants and a gay bishop. We went every week. My brother and I had the service memorized. We would return to our seats after communion and quietly finish the remainder of the service. He, the older and serving the role as the celebrant, me, the younger and relegated to the congregation. After we'd finished, my mother would let us leave early for 5 minutes of liberty before Sunday school. When I was in high school, however, I started casually, tentatively, to question whether I did share those collectively held beliefs. My family stopped going to church regularly. I joke that my father was excommunicated, which is a story for another day and not a joke that my mother appreciates. Like many college students, I took a hiatus from any church community. After college, I moved to France, and I went to Catholic Mass not as a spiritual exercise, but as a language and cultural experience. I stopped actively questioning my beliefs, and I put spirituality on the back burner. By the time Hunter and I were dating, I felt the absence of a church community. Hunter went with me to a few church services. One Sunday, we stood with a congregation, and I recited the words of the Nicene Creed. Afterwards, Hunter leaned over and said, "You know you don't really believe that, right?" He was right, I didn't, but I hadn't examined my beliefs in years. I had slipped right back into unquestioning recitation, and that realization made me stop looking for a church community. Hunter and I moved to Charlotte. We got married. We settled into our home and our lives here. I missed community. I missed having a place where I knew the people surrounding me shared my values. We were planning to start our family, and I wanted our children to grow up in a supportive community like I had grown up in. I wanted them to have adults other than us who they could count on. I knew, though, that I didn't want to join a church that professed beliefs that I didn't hold, or slip back into rote declaration. I didn't want to come home from church and debunk what the children had learned in Sunday school. We were vaguely familiar with Unitarian Universalism, and we found this congregation. On our first visit, we walked in past a sign proclaiming the landscaping as wildlife sanctuary. We opened a door with a decal inviting participants to use whatever restroom they felt comfortable using. We listened to the lay service leaders speak about personal reflection and the painful process of growth. As we continued to visit, we heard about the focus on listening, on taking a back seat in support of solutions, rather than swooping in on the misapprehension of having all the answers. We learned about Room at the Inn, saw the church's participation in racial equity riots and in the Gay Pride Parade. Here, we found a community that shared our values without hollow assertion of belief. We found an active spiritual home, centered on social engagement and a forum to explore individual belief. We joined. Those initial impressions have borne out. I was fulfilled in religious education teacher training to see what we teach our youngest members, like the chalice lighting words that declare us not the church that holds these values, but a church that does. I loved learning that we don't give pithy phrases to our children, but rather encourage them to think, to question, and to engage with their beliefs. I love seeing the children in class forge friendships that will carry them through adolescence and beyond. I loved sitting in this congregation a few weeks ago and hearing a teenager speak unreservedly about their journey in gender identity, evidently comfortable in the support they'd find here. Here is a place where my children can grow up in an accepting community, where they can learn to think for themselves and to enact what they believe. Here is a place that will guide and support them and me to continually contemplate and question, to form and reform our beliefs. It is an interconnected community of individual thinkers. Finding this community is not an end to my spiritual journey, but its commencement.
This poem is entitled Things That Don't Suck by genderqueer poet Andrea Gibson. Things that don't suck. Salamanders, rotary phones, superwoman capes, hopscotch chalk, unicycles, hiccups while kissing, pole vaults, gumball machines, leprechauns, music boxes, welcome mats, hand-me-down lockets, train rides, carnivals, record players, sewing kits, barbershop chairs, bubbles, chestnuts, barnacle hugs, door frames, melted crayons, soldiers in the airport on their way home, icicles, time capsules, hourglasses, recess bells, thrift store coffee mugs, lost and found boxes, go-karts, tambourines, fire pits, paper boats, snap peas, snowflakes, bay windows, porch swings, dance routines, macaroni necklaces, flying ladybugs, high fives, Ferris wheels, extra buttons, crooked teeth, dust drawings, bearded women, fabric stores, turtle faces, sleepovers, mixtapes, grandmothers, freckles, lily pads, farmers' tans, windpipes, accordions. Anyone willing to play the shakers in a band. The day I was so in love, I mistook a nuclear power plant for a lighthouse. French kisses, the smell of a dog's paw, thumb wars, letters in the mailbox, the things we never ordered, but we still received. Riding in the back of a pickup truck beneath a holy New England sky, banjo strings, best friends, tutus on boys, tutus on girls, hummingbirds, whittlesticks, hail collections, rocking chairs, thimbles, love notes, cigar boxes, screen doors, clawfoot tubs, hope chests, skateboard parks, mismatched socks, airplane skywriting proposals, baby giraffes, beaver teeth, porch lights, tiny houses, tire swings, dandelion snow, bathrooms without scales, terrible poems, chugging calming tea, sex with the lights on, sex with the lights off, basketball hoops in dirt driveways in Iowa, snorting laughter, sexy librarians, vegan chocolate chip cookies, boom boxes in the car when stereo break, slip and slides, butterflies that remember being caterpillars, staying alive. The very first used book I bought was titled Us, subtitled Americans Talk About Love. The editor interviewed hundreds of people about romantic love and selected 45 to publish. Each interview began with the same question. Please tell me about the person whom you have loved the most. The table of contents is organized by the length of the love, not the length of the relationship, rather the length of time since the subject first realized, I am in love. My love is what brought me here to this congregation and this faith. You see, I had heard of a they that not only accepted those of all sexualities and genders, but actively welcomed these people. A they that had been fighting for human rights, that had principles of kindness and love, like all religions do. But this they, I was told, worked to challenge their internalized bigotry. A they that did not suck. But choosing to go to a house of faith and choosing to stay at a house of faith are two very, very different things. Various medications have shredded my memory, but most likely, on my first visit, I was inspired by the service before anxiously slipping down the stairs and out the door to drive home. I know I was comforted by an order of service that was similar enough to the liturgy of the United Methodist Church in which I grew up. I know I appreciated the quality of the music and the design of the building and sanctuary, two important factors my mom had in choosing a place of worship. But as I interacted more and more with the members, I began to see it as less of a me and a they, and more as an us, a group to which I belonged, a group of which I was a part of the whole. And I trusted this group. 2 years ago, I shared my name, wrote in cramped, stressed print on a yellow card passed down the pew, and placed it in an offering basket. Felix, I declared. In this congregation, I am no longer going by my birth name. My pronouns are they, them. And yes, I would like to be contacted by a minister. I don't share this at work. I don't share this with my family, with whom I still live. If you asked most of Charlotte, I am not Felix, but I have joined an us where that can be so. When people ask me about Unitarian Universalism, I like to refer to it as a choose-your-own-adventure religion. I point to two of our shared principles: acceptance of one another and encouragement to spiritual growth in our congregations, and a free and responsible search for truth and meaning. Each congregant can, and likely does, have their own spiritual meaning of life. I can believe or not believe whatever I want, and so it is for everyone here in this place of worship. Isn't that beautiful? Isn't that something to cherish and to celebrate? I am the child of a New England WASP who feels God when she's singing, and an ex-Catholic who transcends while savoring duck confit and sharing a bottle of Chateau de Chem. I am a person who first questioned God at 7, but has lit hundreds of candles in various cathedrals in North America and Europe. I'm a person who begged a God, any God, to help guide me through illness as a teen. I'm a person who found the texts and beliefs of other religions fascinating as I created my mishmash of a personal spirituality and faith. I'm a person with bipolar disorder who will forever be on medications to maintain my mental health, as mental illness and mental health are not the same. I was saved by a poet and ink on a skin and a faith that listens. I am a person who does believe in a divine power and the beauty of mathematics and the overwhelming good of humanity. And I have decided that I am a UU. I am a member of the us that is the congregation of the Unitarian Universalist Church of Charlotte. And I suppose this place is one of those things in my life that does not suck.
from Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. in the August of 1959. Science investigates, religion interprets. Science gives man knowledge, which is power. Religion gives man wisdom, which is control. Science deals mainly with facts. Religion deals mainly with values. The two are not rivals. They are complementary. Science keeps religion from sinking into the valley of crippling irrationalism and paralyzing obscurantism. Religion prevents science from falling into the marsh of obsolete materialism and moral nihilism. My wife and I have been members of this congregation since February of this year and had been sporadic attendees for the 2 years prior to that. When asked to speak about the experiences and path which brought me to this congregation, the preceding statement by Dr. King sprang immediately to mind. Prior to moving to Charlotte, I had the fortune of spending a number of years involved in science education, which allowed me to hone a question that has become somewhat dear to me. What is science? I'll ask that again because I think it's an important question that bears reflection. What is science? I've asked that question hundreds of times of hundreds of people, and while the responses vary in their detail, most contain underlying similarities that demonstrate the typical attitudes towards science in our society. It is viewed most commonly as a discrete collection of facts, like a dry, static, huge encyclopedia, or as a cohesive institution with its own specific values and objectives. What science really is, however, is simply a method and a mode of thinking, a way of answering questions concerned with the description, prediction, and understanding of natural phenomena and relationships based on empirical evidence obtained from observation and experimentation. Crucially, when done correctly, a scientific endeavor is based not on proving one's ideas right, but rather in proving them wrong. One does one's level best to sincerely disprove the idea at hand, and if that cannot be accomplished, the idea might be correct. Now, this brings me to a slightly different question. It's one that I've been wrestling with for a number of years, and one that lacks as pleasantly clear and well-defined an answer as the preceding question. And that question is, what is a spiritual experience? I don't need to tell you that there are many schools of thought on the topic. I've come across many definitions and descriptions of spirituality, of God, of creation, of the meaning of existence, and some have resonated with me, while others have fallen decidedly flat. Personally, the best I've heard was from a particularly wise man who asserted that there is an energy field created by all living things, which surrounds us and penetrates us and binds existence together. The older I've gotten, and the more I've observed, the more that I've come to believe that there is some sort of resonant feedback loop created by the interaction of living things that intensifies with increasing group size and emotional intensity, and which, at its highest levels, alters dynamically as a consequence of the interconnectivity of all living things. I would posit that if this is correct, that would represent a powerful underpinning or foundation of the human spiritual experience, if not necessarily the sum total of it. The question then becomes, how do I sort out if this is accurate? My natural inclination is to use the best method I know of to get accurate answers, which is scientific thinking. But a key part of being able to meaningfully participate in such an endeavor is a supportive environment with ample access to information and discourse. If the subject at hand is the human spiritual experience, I can think of no better environment than the Unitarian Universalist faith. But while a broad knowledge base and willingness to explore it are necessary, they are not in and of themselves sufficient. One also needs to be willing to act, For science without experimentation is simply philosophy. In this congregation, I have found an admirable mixture of both broad thinking and commitment to tangible action. It's been a pleasure and a privilege joining in, and I look forward to seeing where this experiment goes.
We call your attention to the announcements in the back of your order of service. More information is available on our Currents webpage, accessed through the UUCC website. In a congregation of our size, we have many joys and concerns. We hold in our hearts and prayers Helen Fowler and Lincoln Baxter, as Helen's father has passed. Also, our members and their families who are burdened with health and other long-term concerns. During the offering music and the passing of the baskets, everyone is invited to light a candle to mark a celebration, concern, or remembrance.
Please join me in a time of meditation and aspiration. What makes beginnings special? Think of your first sip of wine from a really good bottle. Opening page of a crime novel. Start of an idea. Tingle of falling in love. Beginnings have their own energy, ethics, tonality, color. Greenish, bluish, purple, dewy, and cool. Almost transparent as a ripe grape. Tone of alterity, things just about to change, already looking different. Energy headlong and heedless and short like a beam. Think about inspiration, not the idea, but the moment before the idea, when it is total, when it blossoms in your mind and connects to everything, before the coherent thought that gives it shape, locking it down and cutting it off from the universal. The thoughts and experiences that we do not have a word for. Think about the origin. Think about the beginning. Let it be so.
We now take an offering that allows us to exercise that all-important generosity of spirit, an offering that will support the self-sustaining church and its many activities. The contributions of the congregation will now be gratefully received.
We invite you to rise in body or spirit to participate in an affirmation of our faith. We receive fragments of holiness.
When one's personness is freely given, we must open our minds and listen. We must open our hearts and appreciate, and we must reach with our hands to aid growth. Please be seated for the closing music.